Hey Steelers Nation, it's Joe Rockey with the Pittsburgh Syndicate. The day after the first round, it might be a gloomy, typical Pittsburgh morning out there right now, but it is not in Steelers Nation. Today's episode, we're going to be covering a couple of things. First, obviously, Jones. Welcome to the Steelers. We're going to be covering Gonzalez, how he was on the board when the Steelers moved up, the trade itself, how that went down, what our actual cost was, and then what to look forward that's going to happen between now and the start of the second round tonight. Obviously, we're going to have to discuss some Joey Porter Jr. in this part. But overall, when we break down to this, I refer you guys to yesterday or 2 days ago video about who we could draft that could instantly put us in the capability of winning the Super Bowl. My answer was Gonzalez, but there were two viable options. It was Gonzalez or Jones. Either way, we were going to trade up. Obviously, we did. And when push came to shove, the Steelers chose the left tackle out of Georgia over the corner. And there's no way you can really fight with the pick overall. I, as a hardcore corner person as can be, I that's the direction I went. But I also have to look at some other facts, talking now about why Gonzalez is not to be hung up and keep this over Tomlin's head forever. Gonzalez easily could become the best corner in this draft. He's profiled to do that. However, two other corners went before him. So despite the fact his tape showed some amazing action, he wasn't highly sought after. He fell all the way to 17 when it's all said and done. And corners of that magnitude, A, go first, but B, they don't slip that far. Even in a draft that's set up this heavily into quarterbacks, the number one corner off the board, who, by the way, was Witherspoon, who I don't think will be that good, relative to Gonzalez, still went high. So the point being, something behind the scenes happened with Gonzalez that we probably will never know about. And that's why the Steelers, obviously, and the rest of the NFL showed this as well. It wasn't just a Steelers decision. Half of the league said no. So that's something to keep in mind with Gonzalez. But that does not shine a dimming situation on Jones. So Jones, of all of the tackles in the draft, absolute highest upside when we look at the way that he uses his body, the size of his body, and when people project the amount of muscle that can be put upon him. The sky is really the limit for him. Obviously, you can't really get much better pedigree than going to Georgia at this point. Going to Georgia now is the equivalent of going to Bama 5 years ago. This is the powerhouse, right? So anchor the line. He's going to be a left tackle here. And for the argument that says you need to give Kenny all of the best options at his disposal right now, well, that's what the Steelers did. As much as I've been here saying we need to trade Deontay, I still think that wouldn't hurt. Kenny has every single option that can physically be given to him realistically at this point in time. He has a receiver that 2 years ago, 100 catches, was actually really damn good. Johnson was. He just had a major regression. He has George Pickens, who was probably the best receiver in last year's draft and would have been the number one receiver in this year's draft. He has a great tight end, and now he has a rebuilt left half side of his offensive line. Between the two signings, with Samalo probably being the starter, and now Jones, in all probability, going to be the left tackle, rebuilt left side of the line. The right side of the line was fantastic last year. Remember, Chooks didn't let him sack, and Daniels just stepped up and took off. So the offense, while with this first round pick of Jones, is set, basically. There is no need to really address it. Again, my entire argument for not bringing in a high-level skilled receiver still stands. None of that changes. There's only so much the ball to go around. And as a fifth option on the field, do you want to have four receivers out there constantly whenever you need to win games low scoring? Because the simple fact is, getting Jones, while great, does not make you now capable of outscoring teams. So the rest of this draft, for the Steelers' perspective, needs to be defense and needs to be defense aggressively. Which turns us now to tonight. We have, obviously, the first pick of the second round. It's never happened before. So it's kind of cool. And if it has happened, it was well before my memory exists. So for all the long-timers out there, I apologize if I forgot something. But in my lifetime, I don't believe we've ever had the first pick of the second round or the first pick of any starting of a draft day period. So when I look at this, all kinds of possibilities in the way that the draft fell give the Steelers a lot of advantage here. First, the quarterback Levitt being still on the board. Someone's going to want him, probably the Redskins. And there's a lot of people who are just saying, second round, let's go get something for him. The Steelers don't have a lot of assets left when we look at the back half of this draft. We have a second rounder, and last night we traded away the I believe it was 110 or 104 to the Patriots to move up to get Jones. So there's not a lot of back-end draft space. Is that necessarily a problem? I don't really believe so. Because the one thing with this offense particularly, there's not a whole lot of proven talent on it. Everyone's at the point of like, let's get over potential and see what it is. Some of them are closer to showing exactly what you'll get, but a lot of them are just either too young or the last year was incongruent with the rest of their history. And the only real exception is your center and your right guard, because they showed up, they did as advertised, and you presume that they'll continue down that route. But Chooks had a major step up. Is he going to stay there? I believe so. We look at your left side, your line is now brand new. That's awesome. Pickens didn't get the ball, so we don't really, and he's also a rookie, so there's no real baseline to know what's there. Najee, horrible first half of the year when he was still hurt. Great last month. Warren, obviously, that was his first time to step up to shine. So we look around, and obviously the center of it all, Kenny, coming off of his rookie year, so there's no real baseline. So with the offense, this really could just be set for a while and see what happens if it works out. So when I say that there's not really a need to go out and get another fourth round or fifth round receiver, I don't believe that's the case at all unless you're going for the special teams direction. Keeping in mind that the one we got last year of Austin got redshirted last year, and he's still on this team. So there's so much possibilities, and that doesn't even count Miller, and there's so much possibilities in this wide receiver room, I don't see the need to go out and get it. And I think we have, on that note, the deepest tight end room in the NFL. Once we see what little Cam has come up to do, Hayward's going to be a good player. So all this to say, Steelers need to go defense. So then it comes to, well, we have 32 and 49. What should we do with it? I believe trading back, and I'm not saying dramatically trade back. I'm not saying like trade back to the 60s. Trading back a couple of spots, letting the draft fall to you a little bit, and getting extra assets can't hurt. Because on the defensive side of the ball, since they didn't go with Gonzalez, the next best option is probably quantity. The draft fell for the Steelers in a lot of great ways last night. The one glaring thing that I wish would not have happened was number 29 with the New Orleans Saints. Brissy is an amazing defensive tackle. If he would have been here at 32, it would have been a no debate. Draft him, run it up right now. Could have done it last night. But with that being said, he's not there. This entire Steelers nation is clamoring for Joey Porter Jr. And I need to tell you guys this again. If his name was not Joey Porter Jr., you would not want him. His tape is not quality. He cannot cover movement. He can handle straight line and run with you. Great. He covers, like the Hall of Famer in a completely different era, Mel Blount. He covers, I run with you and I hit you. I run with you and I hit you. And then I hit you some more. And then I run with you and I hit you some more. Great in the 70s when you were allowed to do anything. That ain't this NFL. This is how you literally know he's going to be a flag machine. You don't weed that out of someone's personality. That's how he covers every single break. When someone comes at him and they do a hard cut one way or the other, he grabs and hits. That's a flag constantly. Drafting Joey Porter Jr. will set this team back worse than keeping Canada. And that is saying something. So with that being said, trading the pick, getting more assets, and hopefully having someone else be stupid enough to take Joey Porter Jr. would be a fantastic idea. So when we look to say, what direction are the Steelers going to go here? I believe that Sanders from Arkansas, the middle linebacker, should be a targeted player for one of the 2 picks in the second round, probably more so 49. He's an absolute great positional defensive player, puts himself in a great spot. I know every time I did the conversations with him earlier, people were absolutely emphatic with him. I think he's going to be better than the one from Iowa who went last night. Sanders has tremendous upside, a little bit more athletic, but just as equally in the right spot. Sanders, to me, going to be a great pick. I hope we get him. In terms of the corner road, because we still need to cover Cincinnati. I'm less worried about Baltimore, especially now that they've just proven they don't want to have a real quarterback. By the way, he has a losing record to the Steelers, so good for him. TJ will destroy Jackson some more. But they do got OBJ, and they just used the first-round pick on a receiver. So Baltimore is trying to play the let's throw the ball game with someone who can't throw the ball. I'm sorry, guys. I should have been able to keep that better straight face. He was an MVP because he ran around like crazy. But long story short, we need someone who can cover the real passing team in the league, which is Cincinnati. We need to be able to get a corner. I believe now we got a shotgun approach it because we didn't go with Gonzalez. The 2 leading candidates in terms of actually will cover and will cover successfully are Ringo, again, a dog from Georgia, and the one from Maryland. Those are your 2 best next bets. And if you trade back, maybe you can get enough capital where you could finagle both of them. Maybe you just go with one of them. But the other thing that needs to be pointed out here that I did on the cornerback episode a couple weeks now ago is that when we look at the Steelers' current corners on this roster, obviously Peterson, starter, put him there, press coverage, don't worry about it. Wallace does bring above average skill set to the position. He just got torched when he played the more elite number 2 receivers in the NFL. Which, granted, Higgins torched a lot of people last year. Gabe Davis torched a lot of people last year. And Devon Smith tortured everyone all year. So those were Wallace's 3 worst games. And the guy still ended up with an above average quarterback rating against. So Wallace is not a glaring problem out there. And also with our Witherspoon that we have here, before he got hurt, he was all pro level production. And if you believe that you can get that step up out of him, you have the absolute potential of maybe corners not even really a needed position. Granted, you're playing with someone who's an above average. I mean, he's a B+. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Wallace and a wild card. Dude could be injured and out of the league. Dude could be an A+ in Witherspoon. So when we look at this and go, maybe the need to go get the corner isn't there. Again, if Breesy was there, I wouldn't have touched corner. But if we are going to play the let's just throw a lot on the wall, see who sticks and who becomes elite, to me that's Ringo and Maryland. That's the 2 directions that we need to look at for tonight in the draft. Again, avoiding Joey Porter Jr., which again, Steelers Nation, if his name wasn't Joey Porter Jr. from Penn State, you guys wouldn't like him. That's a flat-out fact. He will not be a good pro. So when I look at what Steelers going to do tonight, I'm really thinking that they're going to be trading back. I'm hoping that they do. And who knows, by the time this time actually gets published and aired, they might have already done that. So I apologize on wasting time with speculation with something that's happened. But I look at the fact that this draft broke for the Steelers in such a perfect way for us. I mean, the beginning at the top, watching Houston just blow their entire load to get arguably the second best player in this draft in the edge rusher and get the quarterback that they wanted and needed, there's something to that. Now, granted, I don't think the Ohio State quarterback will be any good. If there's one position in one school that has a stigma on it, has there ever been a good Ohio State quarterback? I mean, arguably. For real. Has there? Because Fields ain't going to be it either. So when I look at this, like, Houston just messed up, and they did it in a very expensive way. Arizona going back just to spend a lot of money to come back up, that didn't really make sense either. And we look at what the cost of people to move up were, it was pretty astronomical. At the end of the day, Houston they swapped ones to come up with Arizona. They gave a 3 this year and then a 1 and a 2 next year. That's a really big expensive price tag to jump up. So as we're watching the draft here, Witherspoon goes early. Jalen Carter ends up dropping a little bit, but still goes early for us. Bunch of other linemen that the Steelers knew realistically they weren't going to get, but the one that was the guard was the key. Whenever he went and it kept Jones on the board, that was the entire setup for us. And not to mention the fact that Detroit blew both of their picks. So when we look at this, the draft fell as great as it could for the Steelers. And I want to talk now about the specific trade that we just did with Belichick and the Patriots. If we would not have taken Jones in front of the Jets, 100% he would have been a Jet. I mean, the Jets had basically told the world that they wanted Jones. So in terms of people trying to say, oh, the Steelers reached up, they traded too far. No, they wanted Jones clearly. And this was the only spot that they were going to get him. He would be a Jet right now had we stayed pat. And on that note, the Patriots ended up taking Gonzalez. So there's a very good chance we would have gotten neither of them and we'd be out in the wind right now. So doing the trade forward is absolutely the right thing to do, and Khan should be commended for it. The fact we basically paid nothing to do it is even more so. Because as we look around, sure, late round picks can become something. It's possible. You catch lightning in a bottle. But it's not consistent. And it has a very low success rate. I mean, half the first round is going to be a bust anyway. It happens every year. So when you go each round back, it becomes more and more likely. So am I worried about that? No, it was basically free compensation. Just like it was whenever we got Allen Robinson from LA. Swapping sevens is essentially meaningless. And we look at this, they got their guy. I mean, there's no doubt. It was one of two choices. Both of them were on the board and they got their choice. They took Jones over Gonzalez. And they did it in a way where they didn't spend really virtually anything. You know, I was thinking under the impression that we were going to go all the way up to 6. And I was totally accepting that we were going to lose one of these second round picks, maybe even trade Deontay to do it. And I was okay. So we look at where this ended up happening. We kept both second round picks. Deontay's still on the team, which is, again, as much as he doesn't give you value after the catch, he still is a professional and above average wide receiver. That's a fact. Again, I would rather have been traded, but that's a fact. So the Steelers didn't really give that much away at all. Basically nothing, and they got the tackle who has the best upside of this entire draft. So they have essentially a mountain that they can just put there and say, next decade's taken care of, Kenny. You don't have to worry about your blind side forever. Now, Cincinnati's going to be testing it. Cincinnati went out and drafted an edge rusher. That's and we'll see if it works out for him. Not exactly thrilled with that pick because it wasn't a bad pick. And it's very un-Bengals-like, and they might actually be turning the corner there of not being the old school Bungles. Again, I'll believe it when I see it, but I think they're just right now a very explosive offense that should be getting a pass rush because they're going to be having leads a lot. They should be getting a pass rush. I think Jones will shut them down, though. I have no worry about Jones winning that matchup forever. So when I look at this overall, Steelers are in absolutely great and fantastic position. We have the ability now to try to get some extra assets here, probably replacing a 4th, maybe a 5th in the trade back. I don't see this being anything crazy for people saying we're going to get someone's 1 next year. I mean, that would be insane. I highly doubt that. I'm assuming this is going to be swapping 2s and a little throw in on the back end. If they get much better than that, that would be absolutely amazing and stunning. I just doubt it will happen. The number one thing that I just want to avoid is the major nuclear landmine, whatever negative word you can come up with enough. that will be Joey Porter as an NFL pro. And to top it off, there's talent out there. I want to make sure, the number one thing for me when we're coming through tonight is Sanders a Steeler. And the other thing that I need to point out here, and this episode's gone really long. The Steelers don't care about their free agents they bring in. I mean, that has just become apparent over the last 2 off seasons. So last year we bring in Trubisky, very first chance. What do? Boom, we signed Kenny, first round pick. Major free agency signing, disregarded. We bring in granted, he's a backup tackle, but now he's not on the team. The tackle we signed in the first week of free agency doesn't have a job anymore. He might as well be cut right now. Because the Steelers keep their starting 5 offensive linemen and then 1 extra at tackle, 1 extra guard, 1 extra center. That's their historical way of building a roster. They're not going to cut Dan Moore. So therefore, the one they just signed, irrelevant. There's Deaver diving down into it. There's a pretty good chance Allen Robinson doesn't even make this team if Miller beats him out. So for those people who are saying, we just signed 2 middle linebackers, the Steelers would never draft one, not at all. There's, in some ways, an indication they're more likely to sign one or draft one because they've signed them. They identify it as a need, and Tomlin cares much more about what you've done for him than what you've done for someone else in the league or at your prior stop, regardless of where that was. So Sanders, middle linebacker, I absolutely would love to have him. And when we look at this, with the exception of Porter, there's not really a wrong spot that we can go here. Their defensive tackle is now light with Brissett getting taken off the board, so I don't think that we should go there at 31, or 32 rather. There's so much potential out there. And when I was doing my previous episodes of focusing on who we were getting, I am more of a high floor person than a massive ceiling. And the reason for that is because the floor knows what I get right now when they step on the field week 1. There are so many changes, and this is more of an NFL thing than a Steelers problem per se, but there are so many coaching changes and scheme changes that teams experience on a regular basis that players that get drafted and stuck somewhere for 4 years can have coaches trying to mold them into different things. And then what that upside that was thought of on their draft day never gets put in the pass because you're now asked to do something that you really shouldn't be asked to do. And that's incredibly common around the league. It's something Tomlin does not do to his players, which is phenomenal. He plays to their strengths. So that's why overall, just from a pure draft standpoint, league-wide, I'm more of a high floor guy. That being said, the highest floor guys just went. So now we're at the spot where you can go for massive potential and the floors are lower. And I think the best combination of that at corner is Ringo. The best combination of middle linebacker is Sanders. And I'm really excited for what's going to happen tonight. Steelers, Jones, he was my number 2 pick. Can't complain. I like I said, I think that this is going to be a spot where this is really Kenny's put up or shut up year. It's a lot of pressure on a year 2 quarterback, but there are no excuses for Kenny Pickett at this point. I would have loved to have gone defense, but I understand what they're doing. Despite the fact he's crushed under the glass ceiling of Canada, there are no excuses for Kenny Pickett. And we're going to see what can happen. Can he make everyone around him better? Can he get Deontay to be an above average wide receiver again, verging upon good and in a dream world great? Can Kenny do that? Can Kenny take the high potential Clay that I was just talking about in George Pickens and take him to the next level? Well, the one thing that's certain after last night, putting Jones on this team, Kenny will have time to do it. And Najee will be able to run through any hole, left to right on this offensive line. And there are not many offensive lines in the NFL that you can run consistently, all of them, across, left to right, without a weakness. The potential for the running game skyrockets with Jones on this team. The potential of Kenny not getting blown up has increased. Even though Dan Moore was better as a pass blocker than most of the Steelers Nation gave him credit for, this is still an improvement. This is Kenny's team, Kenny's offense in every single sense of the team. And if Kenny steps up and takes this bull by the horns, I still don't think that we're going to be able to win a shootout against Kansas City. But we're not going to be hovering in the wild card spot anymore, wondering if we're making the playoffs in Week 18. That part will go away. So Steelers Nation, tremendous upside, tremendous possibilities of what can happen here. And all of the outlooks for the rest of the Steelers Nation basically now hinge, without an excuse, on Kenny Pickett. I think it's going to work. I think that we got to keep our expectations realistic. We're not a 17-0 team now, but we're also not a hovering around 500 team anymore either. And I think we have firmly cemented ourselves, especially now that Jackson got signed, as at minimum the second best team in this division. So Steelers Nation, we'll see you tonight. We'll see what happens. I'll be with you guys again next week. You're not going to get a video tomorrow. I'll do the full draft recap on Monday, and we will go from there.